just to give you an example on revenue side, is that, I won't say the name of the company, but they pay $300,000. Okay, $300,000 for 10 days. Okay, so, but this is a property on the Quasset with a huge garden where they host events, but they pay $300,000 for the rental. There's a lot of negotiation in these contracts, but MTV took us about 7 months to sign this contract. Google took us over a year. Same with Twitter, over a year. Spotify, 18 months. Once you sign, that's it. It's like they're coming to you every time.
Wow, that's pretty unique, and
it's a different world of short-term rentals, huh?
This is episode number 89 of the Short-Term Rental Success Stories podcast. Are you an investor that's looking to have your home professionally managed? Go to cohostit.com for more information. Welcome back to Short-Term Rental Success Stories. I'm your host, Julian Sage. This is a show where I talk to hosts about their journeys in starting and growing their short-term rental business. My goal is that you'll be able to walk away with practical information that'll help you become a better host and learn how to scale your business. Like any exceptional host, we all strive for 5-star reviews, so please go on over to iTunes and let us know what you enjoy, as it really helps support the show. If you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation, to connect with the community. Hey, what is going on, Host Nation? I'm super excited to be back again with you this week. So today I had the special honor of speaking with Chris Morn. Chris is the founder and CEO of AES Group. It's a corporate housing and event management company in Cannes, which is south of France, not Cannes, Australia, like we had with our friend Julie George. But this is Cannes, south of France. AES currently manages 250 rentals during its largest events, being the Cannes Film Festival, Cannes Lions, and Cannes MIPIM. AES also works with some of the largest corporations, some of them being like Google, Spotify, MTV, Twitter, Nike, Microsoft, really big corporations. So I'm really excited in this episode to be able to talk with Chris about his experience of working with such large corporations. In this episode, Chris takes us behind the scenes of what it's like actually working with these large corporations and what it's like actually building a corporate housing company at scale, his unique short-term rental broker model, which is pretty cool, which we dived into in this episode, and how large corporations work with vendors and also their preferred partner model, stuff like this. Chris is also the founder of I-PRAC, which is a really cool and unique certification program, because he saw a lot of issues with people not providing verified short-term rentals to these vendors. So what Chris decided to do was actually create a certification program, which we talk about, and why it's so important in the short-term rental industry, especially with sites like booking.com. And we've seen some issues with some of these larger OTAs where you might go to a property and then it's not what you expect. So we talk about that in this episode as well. Some really cool stuff. Super excited. If you like my show notes for this episode, of course, go to shorttermsage.com/STR89. Or if you like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week, then go to shorttermsage.com/show notes. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Hey, welcome back, Host Nation, to another episode of Short-Term Rental Success Stories. In this episode, I have the special honor of speaking with Chris Morn. Chris, would you please introduce yourself to the Host Nation, let them know who you are, and what inspired you to get into short-term rentals?
Oh, okay. Well, yes. Well, my name is, yes, like you say, Chris Morn. I have been in the short-term rental industry for 20 years now, based in the south of France. And I kind of fell into short-term rentals when I first came to the south of France, and decided that there was a gap in the market for a high level corporate events and accommodation company. So that's what we decided that we would do here in Cannes, and that was 20 years ago. So that's what made me decide to jump into this industry.
So when you say providing, you were working with companies and providing housing for them, so more like a corporate housing company?
Well, we work in Cannes, so it's an events-based kind of town. You've probably heard of the Cannes Film Festival and Cannes Lions and a lot of the big festivals that happen in Cannes. So it's a town where we do a lot of corporate events, like big corporate events where like 20,000 people hit the town. So we were an agency that provided accommodation for large corporate companies who were coming to Cannes for the festival. So we were a corporate accommodation company back then. That's what we started, just in accommodation. We moved into events at a later stage, but that's how we got started. Yeah.
I mean, how does someone even kind of come up with that? I mean, out of all the different businesses that you could be thinking, like, what made you think like this is a good opportunity right now? Was there not like a lot of other people doing it, or how did you kind of fall into that?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of people doing that kind of job, but I've kind of found, when I looked at it, the gap in the market that I saw was that there was nobody doing it to a high level. They were providing accommodation for corporate companies, but the accommodation was not at a high enough standard for corporates. The service was not as a high enough standard for corporates. So the gap in the market was that it wasn't that there wasn't any short-term rental operators in Cannes. It was just nobody was doing it to the level that they should be to kind of attract large corporate organizations. And that was the gap that I saw in the market, and that's what we attacked, and we went into that in a big way. So, I mean, even we've never been in like kind of summer rentals, weekend stays. It's always been a corporate model for us, and we've built a corporate accommodation company.
So you saw that there was a gap in the market. Or can you describe like what the properties were lacking, or like what people were providing to these corporate to these corporations that you were able to better provide?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, when we were doing a lot of our research, I mean, we rented some of the properties from the other, our alleged competitors, and just the standard of the linen was was horrendous. They had, they were renting apartments from owners who were leaving for that week, so they were leaving their clothes. The owners were leaving their clothes in the apartment and then renting it and leaving their clothes in the apartment. They were leaving photos of their family on the TV, and I mean, we're going back 20 years here, so it's short-term rentals has kind of gone a long way. But back then, the standard of just, some of them didn't have TVs. They were renting like fourth floor with no lift. Just the standard. I mean, you could feel it, the smells, there's just no standard to it. I mean, now when you look at online, you see some real high quality, properties available to rent, but there wasn't back then. There was some, but generally about 80% of the agencies were French, operating in a French way. And they just didn't have, for me, they just didn't have that kind of corporate identity of what a corporate traveler was looking for. So there were very low standard, no customer service, 3 people, 1 key for the 3 people, but then 3 people were coming on business. So they were expected to share a key, 1 key for the apartment. And this was just all really wasn't suitable to. So what we decided to do was to bring that standard of quality service, and really promote that. And we would only list quality apartments and look for quality apartments to put onto our website. So that was the gap that we saw. We wouldn't just list a apartment. We'd go to it, we would look at it, tell them where they had to improve, so that we could make sure that every property that we were providing or promoting was of that standard that we wanted to give. And that was easy for us when we were marketing to these big companies. We could prove to them and show them what we were giving, what we were providing. And they were like, wow, this is what we've been looking for so long. And I think that's why AES grew so quick. And, today, where we are today, we're probably the leader in Cannes now anyway.
So you identified this gap in the market. How were you acquiring these units though? Was it with a master lease model, or was it with a you'd find homeowners and then manage their properties for them? And how did you structure your model?
Yeah, we started with just private owners. I mean, master lease wasn't really, to do a master lease back then. It was quite difficult and plus there wasn't many residences, like with multiple properties in the same building. So we started with direct owners, and we just kind of worked with them, and we built a portfolio of working with direct owners. A lot of the owners some of them were French, but a lot of them were international buyers who were buying them as investments and then renting them out as an investment opportunity. So we were working with a lot of these international owners who owned property in Cannes, and we would manage the whole process of the rental, the management, the taxes, and we should just give these owners the support that they need. And we just built that business from going from like 3 properties to 5 properties to 6 to 10 to 20. And that's how we kind of grew. It wasn't probably till about year 3 when we were probably capable of signing a residency, like a master lease, because to get them, you need to have some pedigree. You can't just walk into and sign a master lease after like being open 2 months. So it was about 3 months before we started to sign residencies, but 80% of our properties were owned by private owners. Yeah.
Why would because were these events going on all year long, or how were you structuring that with an owner for them to be able to really benefit? Were you like guaranteeing the rent, or were you only saying, hey, if we rent out your property, you'll get the percentage of whatever it's rented for?
Yeah, well, we kind of structured it in a broker model. So how we started, which other agencies weren't doing it like this way. So we would buy the property for the 5 or 6 congresses. So we would agree, we would yearly price. So let's say, for instance, we would give one owner 20,000 euros for the year, and for them 6 congresses, so about 8 weeks. And then we would then go out and put our clients in them properties, and we would earn anywhere between 40 and 60%. So we weren't a commission base where we were only taking 12, 13% of the rental price. We were buying the property for that period of time and then brokering the lease. So we were then brokering the rental. So we could charge, we could pay, say, 2,000 euros to an owner, and then we could rent it to the client for 4,000. So we could make 2,000 on a rental.
How is that really different from like a master lease? Because you said that you're buying a property for, let's say, a year, and then now you have that property, and then you're leasing it out.
Yeah, but we only have it for 6 weeks. We don't have it for the 12 months. We're only signing for, say, like the one festival in March, one festival in April, one festival in May, June, October, and September. So there was only six big events in Cannes that we could capitalize on. So we would secure the owner's property for them 6 weeks. So it's not a master lease where we were taking it for the 12 months and doing what we wanted. We only had it for these particular festivals.
So how did you find properties like that? Like, I'm sure that in the US or, anywhere in the world, there's lots of events that happen where, maybe that someone doesn't want to go in for a full master lease, but you're saying that you can actually just secure a portion of a property for just a shorter period. When these events happen, you give the owner a larger amount because you're going to be capitalizing, but then you're able to make a difference. You said around $2,000, $1,000 to $2,000 is what you'd typically be able to profit from.
Yeah, and we were working on around about 30-40% profit on a rental. That's what we started with. So yeah, we would rent it from the owner, pay the owner in advance, and then we would resell it to a client. The thing is with Cannes operates in a very different way to many other event destinations around the world, purely because Cannes a very small town, and you have maybe 6,000 hotel rooms, and around maybe 16,000 rentable properties, and then about 20,000 delegates coming to one of these events. So the hotels would get filled up pretty quick, and all of a sudden delegates had to be in the center of Cannes. You had to take an apartment. So everybody who really owned an apartment in Cannes knew that the revenue was coming from the festivals. So it wasn't difficult to find the properties. It was probably more difficult to negotiate against other agents, because other agents would kind of say, you know what, we can give you 3,000. And then you have to decide whether you're prepared to go and give 3 or less or more. And that was that was probably the biggest battle that we were facing back then. That's how it kind of can works in a little bit of a different way to most places.
So you would find this property, you negotiate for the specific period of time, and then were these like pre-furnished properties, or did you have to go in there, put on all the furniture, and get it ready for the corporation to use that property?
No, they're all fully furnished, fully operational, fully furnished. But of course, we're verifying the properties before we sign a contract. So we're not buying in properties that we don't feel that are suitable to our brand. So we would go, but some of the properties that we had, so it depends really. We had properties on the quasi penthouses. They would obviously go for a lot more because they were used for events as well as accommodation. So there's a different range of properties. And yeah, so generally when we were paying them, all of the property was good to go, but we would be advising that owner what we needed that property to provide prior to us signing a contract, and we would check that to make sure it was up to our standard.
Are these property owners like short-term renting throughout the rest of the year, or they have long-term rentals, but only during this specific period of time they block off their calendars for these events?
Yeah, pretty much. Everybody knows that because Cannes a pretty much quiet town when there's no festivals on. But then obviously you got July and August and September, which is 3 quite busy months for the summer. There's a lot of Saudi Arabians and quite rich people come down to the south of France. So once we'd done our congresses, they would be on their own to do what they wanted. So they would rent, for the summer or for weekends, and they would do their thing. But we were predominantly a corporate agency, so we were only renting the festivals.
How did you approach these corporations? Were they very easy? Because when I think of like Disney, Google, like I imagine that they already have, somebody that is managing, corporate rentals, and maybe they already have like a specific area that's dedicated for that. Like how is a guy like Chris or anybody else that, is maybe just starting able to approach these larger companies?
Well, yeah, I can probably give away the secrets now, but because the way that the congresses worked, there used to be a book of all of the delegates. So like a book of the people who were the companies that were visiting Cannes for that particular congress. So you could actually get hold of this book. It wasn't easy, but if you could get hold of this book inside it during the festival, you get hold of this book, all of the companies were in there and the name of all of the delegates. So there was a lot of legwork in hunting these people down and then finding who the responsible person was for corporate accommodation. Then they would say, no, it's not me, it's somebody else. And you would, over a period of time, you would just get to the person who was responsible for that. And that's our first big client was MTV. And that's how we got MTV. I went through about 11 different people to get to the person who was responsible for corporate accommodation for MTV. Once I got to that person, then I was able to present our product, our service, what we could do. But there was a lot of legwork then because social media wasn't as big as it was, obviously, as it is today. And the internet was probably a lot slower and it wasn't as big. So you had to do a lot more kind of using the phone, doing a lot more research, who's responsible for what, speaking to a lot of people. And I think once you pinpointed that person who was responsible for it down, then you could start promoting your service. But it wasn't easy. It was a lot of work, And a lot of the work that we were doing as well was when the Congress was on. So when, let's say, for instance, in 2001, the film festival was in full flow, our job was them 10 days was to find out who was in town, meet them for the following year. So we were meeting people in, say, 2003 to win business for Film Festival 2004. So that's how we were kind of networking and it was old school kind of sales and marketing, not like it is today.
I mean, were you the only one that really was doing this, or was everybody having to go through this process that you went through with, going through these, all these different people through these companies trying to find the person that manages the corporate rentals?
No, that was something that I decided that we would do. I believe that was the way to lead. Believe that was the way to business. That was the way to become number one. And that's what we decided to do. So not everybody else was doing it. A lot of the other companies were just waiting for the inquiry to come in, and that was it. So we were a lot more proactive, and that's why AES grew so quick against the people who'd already been doing it for so long. We came into the market because we were very aggressive in what we were trying to do, and that we were shouting from the rooftops that we were a corporate agency, which meant the corporate companies were wanting to come to us, word of mouth. Then, they're working with MTV, let's work with them. And it snowballed. But we kept that aggressive tactic going all of the time, just to constantly try to find who was responsible for corporate housing for that company, and just pin them down and go to them and provide our service.
So the person that was managing typically the corporate rentals for these companies, were they also doing it? Were they also responsible for like different locations, or was it only for like this specific event that they were managing the corporate rentals?
Some of them, like the larger companies like Disney and MTV, because obviously they weren't just, their event calendar just didn't include Cannes, so they were going to other destinations. So they were responsible for maybe an event that they were attending in London or Miami or something like that. I mean, we didn't get involved with that because we were just a Cannes-based agency. But some of the bigger ones, yeah, they were responsible. They had somebody like for Europe, somebody for Far East, somebody for the States. I mean, them big companies, they were doing events, every week. They had massive corporate budgets. But Cannes always been, for the last 30 years, a lot of the headline events of an industry. Like the film industry, there's events all over the world, but the Cannes Film Festival is the event of the year for the film industry. Same for the Cannes Lions, for the event, for the publicity and advertising festival. So Cannes a huge part of these big companies' calendar. So we were in a very good position.
I mean, what were some of the lessons learned with being able to find like that right person? Like, going through, a company like as big as Google or MTV or, Spotify, Disney, all these different companies, to find that right person, I imagine it's got to be pretty challenging. What were some of the lessons learned? Like, if you wanted to be able to get to that right person a lot easier, what did you do?
I think it's the questions that you ask. I mean, first of all, you've got to speak to the first person. That first person, depending on how you can relate to that first person, will then lead you on to the second person. So if you're not approaching that first person with the right attitude and the right questions and the right understanding of what you're trying to gain, then that person's just going to kind of think, I'm not interested to help you or find out, who you want to be. So we were approaching them in a way saying, look, we know you come to Cannes, and we're the number one agency in Cannes for corporate rentals. We know that your company can benefit from our services. We just need to know who we need to present to. So it's in your best interest to get this down the line to the right person. So a lot of the time they would say, leave it with me, give me your number or your email, and I'll look into it and I'll come back to you. And then a lot of the time they'd come back and go, oh, it's Susan Hill. She's based here. So then you go into the next person. So then you might get to Susan Hill, and Susan Hill might say, well, it's not actually me. You're just going up this ladder to a decision maker. And you've got to be very, very patient, because that was a lesson learned. Because sometimes you think in these corporate companies, you think that somebody doesn't call you back in like 2 days, you think it's lost. But these corporate companies, they don't work sometimes in the 2-day period. So you could get a call back in like 3 weeks later. So you had to be very, very patient, but also make sure you write down that trace. That was some of the errors that we made at the start. because we'd get to like person 1 and 2, and then we'd forget who we didn't write that second person down. So when you're speaking to the third person, you couldn't mention the second person's name, if you know what I mean. So there was tactics that we learned to do, is to draw out the plan of when you called, who you spoke to, at what time. So anybody else within our team could follow that plan to where we were in the ladder of a decision. So it was challenging, because sometimes you're doing a lot of work without any return, but this is all the legwork. I think people just wait for the inquiries to come in. They don't go looking. And we had to go and look. So we learned a lot of tactics on how to be clever and smart in how we got to these people. And then once you got to that person, then you had to sell the service. So that was another challenge. So, but that was, it was good. I mean, I've been all over the world presenting our services to Google, Spotify, Twitter, Disney, Fox. I've been in boardrooms with all these people, because that's how we've got to the, not so much now, because now we're kind of well known, but at the start we had to make ourselves look bigger than what we were. Otherwise, these corporate businesses were like, I don't know about you. So we had to expand and be a lot broader in what we were doing. We had to have a lot more confidence in ourselves than what you would normally have. So we had to be big, we had to be bold, we had to be confident, we had to take risks. But we did all that.
So when you got your first client, MTV, were you were kind of small at that point? You were just trying to live up to the expectation of what MTV would have?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a story. So when I landed MTV, I lived in the studio that I worked from. So I had a mattress behind the door. So the mattress would come out when I wanted to sleep. In the morning, the mattress would go back behind the door, and I would work. And I could only afford a secretary for the Tuesday and the Wednesday. So now listen to this. She's in the same room as me. Okay. And I had a conference call with MTV, and they were calling me at around 4:00. I had to say to my PA, when they phone, and they know this today, so it doesn't matter, but when they phone, you let that phone ring 4 times. And when you answer it and they ask to speak to me, you have to say, let me see if I can find him. That's how you have to answer the phone. You have to be like that. And it's okay, I'll do that. So don't just pick up the phone. Yeah, he's just here. Because that means that we're not. So we were creating this image of that we were bigger than what we were. We weren't lying. We were just expanding on who we were as a small business, trying to get big business. And that's that's a true story. And we landed MTV, that was like huge for us. It was like 40 apartments, worth about 120,000 euros.
Wow. So MTV, they see your portfolio properties. They say, hey, you guys look really good. And now, how many properties are you currently at when you landed them?
16.
16. So you had to essentially triple your business. How did you do that? Were you able to how do you go out and find like those extra 40 properties?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, we had about 3 months to do it. So that was on our side. But that was the point when we knew MTV were paying a lot of money per unit. So we could go to our partners when they weren't partners at the time. We could go to our competitors and say, show me your best 5 properties. And they would show us the best 5 properties. And we would say, okay, are they rented for the film festival? And they would say, no, not yet. And we say, okay, what's the price for these for the film festival? And then they would say, whatever. We'd say, well, look, we'll rent all 5, but we're only going to pay this price. So we would negotiate with a competitor. We would rent it from the competitor, and then we would then double the price and put it into our MTV stock. So we actually went to our competitors and made the competitors. We had about 4. So we got 20 properties, the best 5 of all of them. And we bought them, put them into our portfolio for MTV, rented them all for MTV. We did a great job. And after that was it. MTV became a client for every year since, still a client today, like 16, 17 years down the road.
And since then, you grew to Google, Spotify, all these other, and how, I mean, was there any that you were like, just like, it felt that maybe you wouldn't be able to get them, or was it because you had already got that deal with MTV that you could leverage that relationship and start to go into larger or different companies?
Yeah, we leveraged MTV for sure. I mean, we had MTV on our homepage, that we were an official supplier of MTV on our homepage of our website. That was huge for us. That was a great move, because when we were pitching for new business, for other business, we were able to then say, well, look, we provide all the accommodation for MTV. As soon as you can say that, all the other companies say, well, they must be doing something right if they can do MTV's business. So that made it easier for us to get Google. Google were like, yeah, well, look, we're quite happy to give it a go with you guys. We're not happy with our existing company, so let's do 20, 30 apartments with you. And then, and then we grew. And then that's when we started to get everybody in Cannes started to know who we were. And that's when owners started to knock on our door saying, rent my apartment. And there was a period of about 3 years where we just grew like, 1,000% in inventory and revenue.
It seems like your market was very niche, like, Cannes, people traveling to Cannes, people, these corporations were looking for that, but there's probably some other areas like, like Google in the US and like they are still looking for corporate rentals, and they still are looking for guys, like you that are providing these rentals. I imagine, unless they maybe provide it themselves. Like, why? It seems like maybe for you it was because it was such a niche market. You were able to get in because you also got in early. Do you feel that, though, that you could also, with that existing relationship, also branch out to like other parts of the world or provide accommodations in different areas and they'd still work with you? Or is that different?
We did think about expanding, but I think what we realized, that we had like so much control over what we were doing in Cannes, and that we were delivering like a top class service in Cannes. So, we were making like, big money in Cannes. So, I mean, I wasn't thinking about expanding to kind of make money. So I was like, I think Google would, like, for instance, Google did ask us if we could do some accommodation for them in London, but we had to be honest with them. We had to say, well, all we would do is go to another agency and rent their properties and manage it. We wouldn't be going sourcing the owners directly, and we wouldn't be viewing the properties and doing all of the verification of the property. So you're not going to get the same service we're providing you here in Cannes somewhere else, unless we unless we open an office there and build a team there and train a team there. So I think sometimes you've just got to know where your limits are to provide the service that you want to provide. So we kept in Cannes, and today we're a company that turns over just under 15 million. So we've built that from nothing. So, Cannes got enough. There's enough business in Cannes for us to have a fantastic business, a great reputation, and offer a great service. And that's what we do. So I think we possibly could have expanded, but we decided against it.
But again, so your contracts with these companies is typically for, or with these buildings is typically for like a 6-week period. So you're able to bring in over 15 million during a 6-week period, you said?
Yeah. Our business is generated now is split. We've got accommodation, we've got events, we do yachts, we do design, we do renovation, we do investments. So, today we're not the same company we were in 2003 and 4 when we were building, with all these. So accommodation wise, you're not looking at that kind of revenue. But yeah, I mean, just to give you an example on revenue side, is that, you know, I won't say the name of the company, but they pay $300,000. Okay, $300,000 for 10 days. Okay, so, but this is a property on the Quasset with a huge garden where they host events, but they pay $300,000 for the rental. Okay, so this is no Airbnb kind of style. This is like a corporate property that is like really high end, and this client is coming in paying $300,000 to rent it for the 10 days and then leaving every year. So there's a lot of companies like that. So there's a lot of money to be had if you've got the products and the properties and the clients. You know, like Google pay nearly $500,000 to rent a beach for 10 days.
So Google will approach you and they'll say, Chris, you know, we need a property in Cairns right by the beach. It's got to be able to supply all of our people. We're willing to pay this much. And then it's your job to go out and find that property, or is it vice versa where you find the property and then you present it to them?
Both, because when Google became a client of ours, we started with about 15 properties, but then slowly they were saying, "Oh, Chris, we need another 3, but we're sending another 9 people. Can you sort them out?" Now we're sending another 12 people, 10 people from Germany, Google Germany are coming over, and then it just grew. So then all of a sudden we're like providing accommodation for 100 people of Google. So once you become a nominated supplier for these companies, they just call you and say, "Look, we need this, we need that," So all of a sudden you've gained that trust, and they just become you're their go-to company for Cannes. We
Right.
want to charter a yacht. We want to charter a yacht. Okay, yeah, we'll sort it out for you. We want to hire dancing girls for the venue. Yeah, we'll sort it out on the event side. So all of a sudden you've built that relationship with that client, like a really high net worth client. They just start coming to you for what their requirements are.
Got it. So you started off just providing the housing. You built up that relationship, and then they start coming to you and they start saying, "Hey, we need yachts, we need these caterers, we need all these," and that's where you started off as a corporate housing company, but eventually turned into an event coordinator. Got it. Okay, wow.
It actually it was MTV that turned us into an events company, because we were doing such a good job for the accommodation. Every year during the Cannes Film Festival, MTV do a very, very exclusive VIP party in a big villa up in the heights of Cannes. And they changed it every year, so nobody knew which villa it was going to be. And in 2006, we got the opportunity to pitch for that business. And we'd never done events. So this was kind of saying to myself, can I do this? Is this something I'm prepared to do? So again, this is about risk taking. Are you prepared to say you're going to do it and fail, or are you going to do it and succeed? You just don't know. So, but I said, yeah, let's go for it. Let's have a go. We did it, and we got the business, and we became the event management company for MTV. But we used other companies to help us. Like lighting companies and catering companies, but we were the go-to company for MTV. So we won that events business, and then all of a sudden we became an events company as well. So we could start marketing the fact that we could run events and event venues, not just apartments, event venues. And then that came with more money and more responsibility. So we were growing at such a fast rate, but not just in accommodation. We were, yachts, events, interior design.
That sounds like there's a lot of complexity with that. I mean, it sounds like almost like you have to run a bunch of different businesses, not only accommodations, which is, a whole business in itself, but now you're doing events, which events are just a completely different beast. I imagine, and the amount of work involved and attention to detail and all these different things. Why not just focus on like one particular area, saying like, hey, we're just going to do housing, and we're going to, take over try to be the best in all of that? Why branch off into these different avenues?
I think, we branched off into these avenues just out of people asking us to do it at the start. I mean, MTV approached us about, can we find them the villa for their event during the film festival? So that was something for us to say, well, do we just say no or do we say yes? And back then I was just wanting to build the business, opportunities were working, they were open, doors were opening. And that was something that we decided that, no, let's do it. Let's go. Let's have a go at it. There was no kind of, this is all we do. That we didn't have a mindset in that of like, no, we only do accommodation. We had a mindset that we only work with corporates. So we don't get involved with summer rentals and weekends and marriage and weddings and things like that. We were just doing corporate business. So sometimes we were getting owners who would then say, listen, how much can I get from property? And we were saying, well, if you actually made it better and invested some money and made it a higher standing, you could get more rental. Okay, let's do that. How much will it cost? We would say, well, if you invested 50,000 euros in new furniture, new painting, and some new beds and different things, then we can promote it better to better clients. Okay, let's go. So all of a sudden we had somebody who was willing to pay 50,000 to renovate an apartment. So we were like, well, we can do this. So then that opened into interior design. So it was just opportunities that were opening. So we didn't go out to plan to open these other businesses. They just happened to be part of what we were doing. And that's how we grew. So that was a tough part for me because we had to kind of say, okay, this department's accommodation. This department is interior design. This is yachts. This is events. And that was quite hard for me because I was like 28 and I was overwhelmed with trying to run such a company of all of these different things. But, it's this is the thing, jump in and have a go, I think.
Hey, this is Julian, and I wanted to be able to give you our newest book, Airbnb Secrets Revealed, How to Build a Fortune on Airbnb Without Owning Property. In this book, we talk about the concepts of rental arbitrage investing, as well as co-hosting, and how you can build a business leveraging other people's properties. This book is perfect for the new short-term rental investor, and it's something that I wish that I had when I first started, as it would have saved me a lot of trouble and helped me to understand how to be able to leverage the power of short-term rental investing in your own real estate portfolio. If you'd like to get our newest book completely for free, go to shorttermsage.com/free book. Now, back to the show. Did you ever have like any big scare moments like with this business model? Like if one of your corporate clients, they decide to pull out because of, let's say, a pandemic, they say, hey, we're everybody in the company's sick and we're not going to be able to go. And you've already got these contracts, or do these types of situations happen often?
Not with the corporate clients because they're paying deposits well in advance, and their balance is due 6 weeks prior. So they're paying 6 weeks in advance the whole amount of money for the rental. There's a couple of times in our early days where we signed some contracts on 2 penthouses, thinking that we would rent them. And they cost us about 45,000 euros each. And we didn't rent them. They stayed empty. But we still had to pay the owner. So we lost like 90,000 euros on a deal because we paid for it thinking we could find a client. We didn't find the client. And we got left with 90,000 in 2 properties sitting empty. So that's happened, that's, but generally cancellations, we've never had any problems with cancellations that have caused us any problems because we always get the money in advance.
Have you ever had any situations like where a competitor was able to, take that business from you? Because like you said, you started off in the housing, you were able to, be that housing provider. But let's say, let's say I was in Cairns and I wanted to start this business. How can a person that is trying to, provide this service be able to compete? Or is there just like all these companies just say, hey, we're just working with Chris, nobody else. We're not willing to do that?
Well, I realized quite quick when we were working with these big companies that they went through a very, very large due diligence before they signed contracts with us. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to bring us in as a nominated supplier. So, and when I would realize that it was actually MTV that wanted AES to be a nominated supplier. And when I heard that, I realized that was somewhere we needed to go. We needed to start getting all of these companies to accept us, AES, as a nominated supplier. Once you can get yourself a nominated supplier for Google or for Twitter or for Spotify, they're not going anywhere.
So they all basically kind of have the same system on how they vet and qualify. So they're all kind of maybe using the same type of person in their business that will create the system for how they work with companies like yourself.
Yes. And so that it's not, you can't just kind of have a guy from Google saying, I'm coming in and because Google have kind of said, we're not paying him. I mean, who's he? That's not going to happen. You have to use AES because they've already gone through the due diligence and signed it and passed it. And that's our company that we use for accommodation and events in Cannes. So once you get to that point, that nominated supplier, you've got like 12 months notice before they can release you from a nominated supplier. They do this to protect themselves as big organizations. So, and they all kind of work in the same way when you get to that level. So they're not going anywhere. If you can provide and deliver every time, they're not going to look for cheaper pricing. They're not going to look elsewhere. You could try and pitch for that business. They're just going to close the door. So what we did was we changed the whole way that Cannes was operating by bringing these big companies into our business, but signing these nominated supplier contracts.
So really right now in Cannes, you're the one that is working with all of these large corporations, and then everybody else that's doing it, because I'm sure that you're not the only one, but everybody else is maybe going with smaller vendors that are working on a, more just like a good old boy system where it's like, hey, I know this person, I like to work with them. And
yeah. And I mean, now we are official partners of the film festival organizer. We're an official partner of Cannes Lions. We're an official partner of Rig Midem. So we've grown to be like that go-to company for corporate. So we've got that name. So of course we've got competition, but generally people are not they're not looking to move away from us because we deliver what we say we're going to do.
And that nominated, provider, did that also translate over to the other, like the events and the yachts and all of these other things?
Well, they not always, because it depended on what you were nominated supplier for. So it depended on what that your nomination supplier contract outlined. But generally, if that company wanted a service, they would come to us and say, look, can you help us out here? We're looking for a yacht. We're looking for another venue. We need to accommodate 6 directors. We need to, and they would just come to us and we would say, yeah, no problem. That was the relationship that we built, that we were here for them. And whenever they needed anything, they just knew who to call.
Is that basically the same that for any location, let's say, somewhere else in France where maybe Google and all these other companies are going, they're going through the same process, maybe it's just a different Chris that has an event set up and provides these contracts or this housing?
Absolutely, because they're not operating in any other kind of way. They have systems in place that they have to follow. Like Jack from Google can't just go and spend 20 grand on his own. He can't. He's got to go through a nominated supplier. Who is the nominated supplier for this? Who is the nominated supplier for that? So if you want to get into corporate rentals at a high level, you've got to go to the top and speak to the people and go to get and structure a nominated supplier's contract and say, we will provide your services, your accommodation, and we want a nominated supplier contract. And that way they say, yes, this is what we want. There's a lot of negotiation in these contracts. But, MTV took us about 7 months to sign this contract. Google took us over a year. Same with Twitter, over a year. Spotify, 18 months, because they go through. So if you want them, you've got to be prepared to jump through all of the hoops. But once you get them, once you sign, that's it. It's like they're coming to you every time.
Wow, that's pretty unique, and
it's a different world of short-term rentals, huh?
Yeah, it is a different world, and I mean, like, how do you utilize those properties though? Is like your business only for like that 6 week period, or are you providing them, all these different companies, different types of services throughout different parts of the year as well?
No, because Google come for the Cannes Lions in June, Twitter come to the Cannes Lions in June, Spotify Cannes Lions in June, Apple Cannes Lions in June. So we're only working with them companies in June. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of prep work involved. So we're working with them like in January, February, building up, but the actual service is only during the Cannes Lions Festival. So, and then they go and we see them the following year. So we work with there's 6 big festivals throughout the year: March, April, May, June, October, September, October. And they're the festivals that we work. And after that, we don't work.
Which is where you actually started. You got a little bored and you started I-PRAC?
Yeah, kind of. Well, actually, that came not so much out of boredom. It came out of back in, it was 2014, when we had a family who arrived in Cannes and they were frauded for £15,000. So to cut a long story short, they ended up coming to our office, and I realized that they'd gone onto a website. They're from the UK, paid £15,000, arrived in Cannes, villa didn't exist, £15,000 gone. So they were in our office, and I was talking to them about it. We found them an accommodation to help them out and different things, but I realized that there was so much fraud going on in our industry, short-term rentals. It wasn't something I was seeing on a daily basis because we were dealing with big companies and in Cannes. But once I started investigating fraud as a global problem, it was huge. But there was nothing out there that solved the problem in terms of consumers being able to book with a legitimate operator, and a legitimate operator being able to showcase trust and credibility to a consumer. So there was nothing out there. So it was just like a little bit like the Wild West. You can trust me. Okay, maybe. Yes. Yeah. Okay, fine. There's the money. There's not fraud. So that's why I decided in 2014 to say, you know what, I'm going to have a go at fixing this, and invested all my own money. And we founded I-PRAC in 2014, and it launched in 2016.
And so kind of the same idea that Google, all these larger corporations will only work with someone that has been, becomes a nominated supplier, someone that's gone through that vetting system. They wouldn't have worked with you had you not had, the credibility, the verification, that due diligence. And so when you saw that there was other people, people that were working and maybe on that more, good old boy system, that it just didn't follow through because the person that was trying to work with this other contract wasn't who they said that they were, that you decided to start I-PRAC to give that extra layer of credibility.
Yeah, and now what I-PRAC does for the industry is it allows pretty much any operator who's legitimate to showcase trust and credibility without having to go through, like, what we did, nominated suppliers and all this kind of thing. I-PRAC's it's a lot streamlined. It's an application process with supporting documents and a verification at the end with a logo and a payment guarantee. So it's a structure that can allow individual property owners to become approved, and also rental agencies to become approved. So if they can kind of display the I-PRAC logo on their website, they could go and get corporate business. They can convert more rentals into more inquiries into rentals, because they can showcase a third party verification, which is the I-PRAC verification. It's not you telling your consumer, don't worry, you can trust me. It's like, yeah, no, this is a third party saying, no, they've gone through our robust application process and they passed, and you can trust them. So becoming I-PRAC approved is like the way to be trusted within the short-term rental industry right now. And I-PRAC's growing at a massive rate, quick rate as well.
Now, is this, people that are looking at like an I-PRAC, certificate being I-PRAC approved, is that really more for like companies like Google, Spotify that are looking and saying like, are these guys verified? Or is this more for like, maybe like a college campus or, a startup that is looking to, not just work with maybe, some guy out that has a property, but have that extra layer of security?
Well, the thing is, I-PRAC's been designed for anybody. I mean, it's designed to be able to showcase trust and credibility, and any consumer paying you directly as an I-PRAC member, their payments are guaranteed. So yeah, it could work for a corporate company, could certainly work. Corporate companies love I-PRAC members because they know that they can be trusted, and they know they've been approved by I-PRAC. But, John from New York also, who's just going to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in London, he's going to rent from an I-PRAC member. He feels comfortable because the guy's trustworthy. He's been I-PRAC approved. So I-PRAC works for small operators, individuals, to high. It's a global verification, so it works for everybody. I mean, we know from research in the last couple of years that certainly corporate, not so much like Google and big global brands, but just like a construction company where maybe's got 20 guys who are having to go to London and stay in rented accommodation for a week. So that construction company, 9 times out of 10, before they were using hotels, just because hotels they could trust. But now with I-PRAC, they can find an I-PRAC member who's a short-term rental operator, and then they can rent and put their 20 guys into accommodation through this I-PRAC approved rental agency. So all of a sudden, I-PRAC's allowing agencies to convert and actually gain corporate rentals, like get into that corporate market because they're I-PRAC approved.
So with I-PRAC, the way that you structure that is once you get approved, people that go through, you said an I-PRAC agency can actually get business referred to them. So let's say I only want to, I'm going to London or Paris or whatever, and I want to make sure that maybe I'm not booking on one of these like platforms, one of these OTAs like Airbnb, and I'm trying to book somewhere else that I can go to I-PRAC, and then I-PRAC will show me only properties that are I-PRAC approved, and then okay.
Yeah, you can use the service of I-PRAC Travel Desk and say that you're going to London, and then I-PRAC will give you a list of agencies who are I-PRAC approved who provide accommodation in London, and then you can email them and book with them direct.
Got it. So me to I-PRAC, and then I-PRAC to a property manager that has properties that are all been verified. So you're kind of like a middleman.
Yeah, for trust as well. The Travel Desk was launched in 2018 to introduce our members to the corporate market, but we didn't start it like that. But it's certainly now we do allow them to get into that market.
And is there like a split that you get for referring the business to the agency, or is that only based off of them, renewing their certificate?
Yeah. Once we provide all of these additional services just to provide further value to our members.
Right.
That's all we're trying to do. We're not looking for commissions. We're just providing value to I-PRAC members. They already pay to become a member and verified. And once they've paid that annual fee, we don't take anything else. So we just try to help them to build their businesses.
Right.
So we don't take any commission, no.
Right. Because if people just signed up for I-PRAC and then, they got the stamp of approval, but nobody knows what it is. So then your job kind of now is, get the word out there for I-PRAC, but then also you're looking for companies and to tell them like, hey, the same way that you were doing with Google and Spotify and all these other companies saying like, hey, we're the guy that you should trust. You're going to these companies and saying, hey, we're the guys that you should trust because we've got all these other places that you can stay at. Is that what you're currently doing?
Well, it's not really. I mean, the way that it works at the minute is that we've got just under 45,000 members who are all I-PRAC approved in 28 countries. That's where we are today. And basically, anybody who works with an I-PRAC member can make sure that they're trustworthy. That's basically what it is. If you book through an I-PRAC member, you're not going to get frauded. You're working with a trustworthy professional operator. But if a company, when we opened the travel desk, this was purely for corporate organizations. So let's say, for instance, Google was sending 20 people from the US to London. Google could call the I-PRAC travel desk, and I-PRAC travel desk would put them in touch directly with an I-PRAC approved member that they could trust and book their accommodation with. That's it. There's no commission. There's no nothing. We're just providing a service to corporates, and that can bring value to our members. And that's it. So it just becomes more valuable to become I-PRAC approved because it offers you more opportunity to gain more rentals.
Got it. Wow. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. That's a pretty cool model. I'm sure that we could keep on talking for quite a bit, but I do want to wrap up and respect your time here. But if you could go back, let's say you were placed in like the US, let's just say, and you were to start all over with this, housing or event business, what would you do differently if you had to start from scratch?
Ooh, what would I do differently? Oh God, that's a good question. I think probably, if I differently would probably be to hire differently. I think our hiring process at the start was very weak. It was very, I think a lot of our problems came from our hiring process. But apart from that, I think our model was pretty good. I mean, I think having too much of a plan is, it can be too structured. And I think I just kind of landed in Cannes and just said, you know what, I'm capable of doing this, and I'm just going to go and get it. So I don't think I would change that. So doing anything differently, I don't think I would, but I'm not sure whether I could work in a model outside of the Cannes model.
Why's that?
Well, the Cannes model is very special in how it works in terms of it's a very niche. So, like let's say for the Cannes Film Festival, we were doing, we had 250 apartments rented, and we had every apartment arrival within a 48-hour period. So if you imagine doing 250 apartment check-ins over a weekend, so this is like logistics are different. We had to build a massive, our teams were different. I mean, Cannes is a small city, but we had to zone our check-in teams. So we had 10 check-in managers here for apartments that were over this side of town, 5 in the middle, 10. We had 50 check-in managers for the film festival managing 250 properties. I think if I went to the US and started looking at just a normal rental management company model, I'd probably struggle because I wouldn't understand it as much as I understand the Cannes market, But where my expertise comes is corporate, corporate management, corporate understanding the corporate world of short-term rentals. That's where I know I live and breathe that.
Do you think that this is a model that is something that you can very much, like I know like Sonder is, kind of scaled in the US, and it sounds like maybe this is kind of the same way that they're working. They're trying to become like a nominated provider with these larger companies.
Absolutely. Sonder is doing exactly that. They're going to these companies and they are getting them, and because all of these big companies know the standard they're providing around the world. So they're going to go to Sonder. Sonder's going to deliver. That's exactly the model Sonder's trying to provide on a global basis. I did it in Cannes. Sonder's doing it around the world.
So Sonder very much could say like, hey, we want to go to Cannes, and they could try to compete with you as far as providing that housing. And depending on how their relationships are, they could potentially take that business.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Not in Cannes anyway.
Not as you can. But that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to do something like that.
But that's where they're going to go. That's where they're going to go to be to have a prominent feature in every major city like Paris, London, Berlin, US. All of these major cities, you're going to find Sonder products, and everybody knows what they are. So they're going to love it. They know what they're going to get. So that's what we created in Cannes. Everybody knew what AES would provide. So they would come to AES. They knew we'd deliver. They knew the properties were quality. So Sonder's model of doing that is great. But what they're doing is they're going to have a lot of missed nights. Like they're taking master lease. So they have to rent every day, every night. So they're going to have a lot of nights where the whole residence is not full. Or, we weren't worried about that. We were working during the Cannes Film Festival when there's people sleeping in tents because they can't find accommodation. So our Cannes model was so unique, So, but maybe if Sonder come to Cannes, maybe they should just give me a call.
Yeah. Okay. That's
no. It might be easier for them.
It probably would be. That's really interesting. Do you see that this model, this more pop-up style, is something that can be done in other places? Like in the US, we've got like the Super Bowl, we've got like different events like golfing tours, stuff like that. Is this something like this broker model that you're talking about that is very available otherwhere?
100%. If you're brave enough to go out and say, but you don't have to be brave the first year. Let's say you go out and do master and you just go and get 10 properties and say, I'm going to book your properties. And then you have a Super Bowl specific website for rentals. But you have to be smart about the properties that you rent. So you want to have penthouses that can host events or cocktails, that type of thing. You go and pay the owner $5,000 for the night or for the 3 nights, and you go and find a client who's prepared to pay 20. That's possible. And Miami will be a good place to do it.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to talk more about that because we're in Miami now. But Chris,
really?
I want to thank you.
I've got people who could help you build that same model we did here in Miami.
Okay, we'll talk after this call. But Chris, what's the best way if anybody wants to be able to find out more about you, AES, I-PRAC, if they are interested in joining the certification? How can they best get in contact with you?
Well, for AES, they can email me at chris@aeseventgroup.com. And for I-PRAC, it's chris@i-prac.com. Same with the websites. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I don't do any other social media, but LinkedIn, I'm quite active on there. So if you did a search on LinkedIn with my name, you'll connect, and I'll be happy to connect and network with anybody.
Awesome. And of course, we'll include all the links in the description box down below for those that want to learn more. But thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time. And until next time, Host Nation, keep on hosting.
Thank you so much, Julian. Really a pleasure.
Hope you hosts benefited from the show. If you found value, please go on over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let us know what you enjoy about the show. If you'd like to talk to hosts that have been featured in these episodes as well as the community, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation.